Good morning. Welcome to Monday Morning Coffee and Chat with Hallee Bridgeman. I'm so happy you could join me. I have my cup of coffee, so I hope you have a cup of coffee or tea and you have a few minutes while we chat. Happy Memorial Day. Today is also my son Johnathan's 12th birthday. So I can't believe that my youngest child is 12. I mean, my oldest child has graduated from college this year, and now my youngest child is 12. And it's incredible to me. And the time that's gone by, I was thinking this morning as I was getting ready for the video, how he was born. And so I'm going to tell you a story. So many of you know that Scott, my 13-year-old, who will be 14 in a couple months, was a 30-week preemie. And basically what happened was I had pregnancy-induced hypertension. And the morning he was born, I was starting to throw proteins in my urine, which means that I was like teetering on the edge of preeclampsia. And preeclampsia is dangerous because the next thing is eclampsia, which is like death and stroke and all of those things. It's like a system failure. So I had been in hospital for 10 days and did an emergency C-section. He was born at 30 weeks. He was 3 pounds and 5 ounces. And so when we got pregnant with Johnathan, I have really amazing insurance through Greg's National Guard. And I don't need a referral for specialists. And so standing there with the pregnancy test in my hand, and, I was 35 and had a baby who was a 30-week preemie, I called, in Lexington, Kentucky, I called a high-risk OB and said, and I was barely 4 weeks pregnant, and said, I need an appointment today. I have a 30-week preemie, and I just found out I was pregnant. And they got me in that day. At 4 weeks pregnant, they got me in, and I went to the doctor every single week of Jebs pregnancy. So I went 34 times. And he said that he had the benefit of hindsight and that he would not have to react. He could preempt. Like my doctor in Florida, all he could do was react to things that happened. This doctor would anticipate that it would happen, and so knew immediately how to react, how to preempt versus react. And so the first time my blood pressure started to creep up high, because in a woman's first trimester, blood pressure drops. That's why they get really lightheaded, because your body's producing blood for the baby. And so even my blood pressure, which is high on a good day, had dropped, because that's a normal first trimester. But as soon as that shifted and the blood pressure started to climb back up, he started me on blood pressure medicine, instead of just saying, well, it's possible you just had a stressful day, or it's possible this, it's possible that. He never even hesitated to put me on blood pressure medicine. So I think what it was called was Toprol, and I'm sure that a medical person would correct that. So every time my blood pressure would creep up, he would increase that dose, and he would increase that dose, and he would increase that dose. So by the time Johnathan was born, his goal was to get me to 36 weeks. So at 32 weeks or something, I was on full bed rest. And at 36 weeks, I was taking 9 50-milligram Toprol pills in the morning and 7 in the evening. That's how much I was on. I was taking 15 50-milligram doses of Toprol a day. And one morning, my blood pressure went sky high. And I was 36 weeks that day. And so I called him, and it was a Sunday. And he said, just come meet me at the hospital. He wasn't going to prescribe any more medicine. But I'd been on full bed rest for 4 weeks and on ridiculous doses of medicine. And my blood pressure was still crazy. The bottom number was 110, I know. And I had this horrible headache, horrible. And so my mom and Greg were there, and my mom had Scott, so she stayed home, and Greg took me to the hospital. And I was checking in, and the nurse asked me what medicines I was on, and I told her my dose for Toprol, and she said, "That's not right. That can't be what you're on." And I handed her the bottle, and she read the prescription, and she was fascinated at the level of medicine I was on, that my blood pressure was that high. So anyway, we come around to, they give me something called Reglan, which is like an antacid, but not oral. It's like something that goes into your IV that's supposed to like reduce, I think, your stomach's reaction to the surgery, to like having whatever. I don't know. I have no idea what it is. I know this is what I know about it. I had a panic attack. And so I'm laying there with my blood pressure through the roof, stroke levels, and I have this panic attack that isn't my brain. Like, I'm not emotionally having a panic attack, and I'm not mentally having a panic attack. My body is having a panic attack. And all I want to do is rip all of my IVs out and run away. And I'm telling the nurse something is wrong. And she's like, "You'll be fine. You need to relax. You need to calm down." And finally, I grab Greg by the shirt and I pull him to me, and I'm like, "This is not me. Something is wrong." And he completely believed me. And he said to the nurse, "Find the anesthesiologist. Find the person who gave her this medicine that you just gave her." And the nurse is like, "There's nothing wrong with her." And my husband's like, "Get an anesthesiologist in here." So the anesthesiologist came, and he said, "This is a rare, I've never seen it happen, but I've heard that it could, reaction to Reglan." And at that point, I was just upset, because it was like all the joy of the morning was stripped away from me. And I couldn't enjoy the fact that I was about to have this baby, because I was in the midst of a panic attack that had nothing to do with my mental or emotional stability. And once I intellectually understood that it was just a reaction, all I could do was like just kind of go into my head and try to avoid ripping the IVs out of my arms and running away. Like, it was a true test of my perseverance and my determination not to make an idiot of myself. It was truly that bad. So then they take me to go prep for the surgery, and because I'm having another emergency C-section. And when you have a C-section, there's a nurse that helps the anesthesiologist, and you bend over her arm. And as you bend over her arm, it exposes your back, and the anesthesiologist puts the spinal block in. And I remember when I bent over her arm, I had another moment. And the thought was, hold on, wait a minute. I just remembered, this is going to hurt. This is going to hurt when it's done. Like crazy hurt. Like, they're about to open me up and rip a baby out of me in a panic to keep the baby and me alive. And when it's all done and they put me all back together and this spinal block wears off, I'm going to be in a lot of pain. And I didn't move because, the anesthesiologist is putting a needle in my spine, but my whole brain was like overwhelmed with the memories of the recovering from a C-section, not being able to see my baby in ICU because I had, stroke level blood pressure. It was like all of these memories of the horrible post-surgical moments of Scott's birth flooded my brain. And I don't know if it was the Reglan or if it was just me, because, women forget. Women forget what the pain of birth is. And I know it's just the way that our brains protect us, like to sustain the human race. There's no way we can possibly be allowed to remember. So I don't know if it was the Reglan and the panic attack I was having, or if it was just the way that, the human brain processes information. But I suddenly was like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this again? This is insane that I willingly and intentionally put myself in this position again. And then the spinal block hit, and the effects of Reglan completely diminished. Like, and the anesthesiologist told me, confirmed with me as I was trying to explain to him, like as the numbness hit me, because it's like from here down, from here down with the serious spinal tap for an emergency C-section, I was like suddenly fine. And he said that's and the headache went away. Like the blood pressure headache completely went away. And so for the first time in hours, I was not in the midst of a panic attack, no longer terrified of what was going to happen to me when I came out of all of the anesthesia, and my head didn't hurt anymore. And suddenly I could anticipate the birth of my son. And he was born, I think we got to the hospital at 7 a.m. and he was born at like 8:54 or something like that. So, I mean, we're not talking all day. We're talking less than 2 hours, but these were horrible 2 hours. And I remember Greg bringing me a photo of him because I was in ICU. I was dying and I couldn't go to him. He was 2 days old before I saw him, I think. And when he was born, his lungs collapsed. His lungs just popped. And they had him in ICU with chest tubes or the things going into his. No, they didn't. I don't remember. It was very hazy. So anyway, so his lungs are regenerative. And so even when they collapse and pop, they just needed to get him an oxygen, and he had a feeding tube. And so I couldn't go to him and he couldn't go to me. And so it was a couple of days before I saw him, but Greg brought me a picture, and I remember looking at him thinking his name should be Biff because he looks like a little football player, because Scott was 3 pounds and Jeb was 6 pounds. I mean, we're just talking about a little bit of extra body fat, but it was enough it was enough to make him look like this plump, rich, full child. And I remember when I finally got to him and held him, he was so tiny. I mean, he was in preemie size clothes and everything. He just had so much more body fat than Scott that he looked like this huge baby in a picture. And he was in preemie clothes for quite some time. So, and he was in the NICU for a long time, like 10 days, I think, because his lungs had to fill back up with air. So, and the hospital was very gracious and allowed me to stay in my room. I mean, no one cared that I was there, and I got to stay as long. I don't think I ever left him. I think I went home with him. So it was crazy. So that's my birth story with Jeff. And today he's 12, and that child is like an incredible creature. He is really intelligent, but beyond that, he has the most loving heart. I was listening to him the other night playing Fortnite, and he has headphone and he's talking to people and their kids, and they don't know each other. They're complete strangers, but he was training this girl what to do. And all he kept saying was, you're amazing. Look at you. You got this. Okay, now go here. Oh, look at you. You're like a boss. I'm so proud of you. Do that again. Yes, just like that. You're incredible. And he just constant affirmation, leadership, encouraging. And he's like that all the time. He's very, very talented with, he can build anything out of cardboard, anything. He made a ventriloquist dummy out of cardboard that actually operated with triggers, not like a hand puppet. It was, ventriloquist dummies use switches and triggers. So did his, but it was cardboard and string and hot glue. And he and also is a really talented ventriloquist. And so much so that we were taking him to a ventriloquist convention this summer, and we're really sad that they canceled it last week because he was going to be surrounded by the ventriloquist that he watches on YouTube constantly. and learns from them and mimics them and does what they do. And we were really excited that he was going to get to meet them and, you know, be mentored by them. So anyway, so happy birthday, Johnathan. And your birth was definitely an adventure. And I'm so thankful that, that you completed our family, and we love you, and happy birthday, my son. So you guys have a great week, and I will see you next Monday. God bless you.